Welcome to the Dudeology Show, where real dudes discuss cool stories, awesome stuff, and killer gear. We're your hosts, the professors of Dudeology. Make sure to check us out, dudeologyshow.com, at Dudeology Show on your socials, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Welcome to the Dudeology Studios with your professors of Dudeology, B, no diggity, no doubt, money, and the little Romeo of audio, the Mr. Gambino. Before we get any further, take a moment and click on subscribe. And once you do that, you have done your part in advancing the movement. That is the effort to encourage and inspire dudes to be better and do great things, ultimately making the world a better place. Joining us today from an undisclosed location is retired U.S. Army Master Sergeant Nathan Aguinaga. Master Sergeant Aguinaga's career spanned 20 years in the U.S. Army, where he did a ton of awesome stuff like Ranger School, Jump Master School, Drill Sergeant duty, and several combat deployments. Now an author, he is here to discuss his time in the 82nd Airborne Division, as chronicled in his book, Division, Life on Ardennes Street. Having served under and beside Nate, I can tell you he is one great American and a straight-up solid dude. Nate, welcome to the show, my man.
Hey man, thanks for having me. I appreciate it, Brandon. I appreciate it. You guys are awesome, man. This is a good accomplishment for us all to get together, man. Pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, let's get rolling here, and we're gonna crack a fresh Miller Lite. Nate, is that still the beer of choice?
Absolutely. Yep. I'm cracking mine right now. Cheers to you.
Work for Miller Lite or for the Miller companies, please be aware that Dudeology Show still has some sponsorships available, but they're filling up quickly. So we'll make an exception for you then. Reach out.
That's good stuff. Hey, Nate, so before we get into some of the book and what our listeners really want to hear about the 82nd Airborne stuff, man, I'm about to blow your mind, dude. So I was cleaning out the closet a couple weeks ago, and I came across some old orders and paperwork and I dug up. And no shit, dude, 23 years ago today, to the date, is the very first time you and I met, man.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I swear to you, 23 years ago. I'll take a picture and send it to you. So I had processed in country through 2nd Division, and I went up to battalion and then company, and then I put on your. I can't remember my first job I had on your squad, but I remember sitting there, and it was like 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, and we're sitting there in the little CQ room or whatever, and you're like, hey, Sergeant Auggie. I'm like, hey, what's up? And you're like, come on, let's go get all your stuff. And it's like 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. I hadn't eaten yet. And you were like, all right, time to go to the arms room. And I'm like, dude, the arms room? I'm like, why do I need to go to the arms room? You're like, well, if the alert goes down and North Koreans roll across the border, you're going to need something to shoot these guys with. And I was like, all right, man, you gave me a beer after that, man. I think we've been friends ever since, man. But if you could have told me that I'd have a podcast and you'd be an author and we'd be chatting 23 years from now, man, I would have never believed it, dude.
Mosley, if you would have told me, if you don't mind me calling you Mosley, because I always called you Mosley anyway. Dude, if you would have told me 2 years ago that I would have written a book, I would have said you're smoking something, man. But yeah, wow. That's funny, man. Yeah, that's crazy.
I'm proud of you, man. And you 82nd dudes, I'm gonna say this to you, and I say this from a good place, man. You guys are kind of a little bit annoying, because you're always all that devils in baggy pants, all American division and all the other crap. I think it probably was, all of us other folks who were like air assault and stuff were just probably a little jealous. And I can admit that now that I'm older, man. But your book, Division, Life on Ardennes Street, focuses on your time in the 82nd Airborne Division. So if you don't mind, give our listeners a brief overview of the 82nd Airborne Division, maybe a little bit of history about the 82nd.
Okay, well, the 82nd came around during World War I, actually. It was actually just the 82nd Infantry Division during World War I. And the reason there's a double A on that patch or on their unit realm or whatever it is, unit insignia, that's what you call it. But the reason the 82nd's on, or the All-Americans on there, is because there was one soldier from every state in all 50 states that came into the division. So they called it the All-American Division. That's where you get your double A from.
Some good facts
And
right there.
so, I'm sorry?
That's great facts.
Yeah, yep. And then, of course, during World War II, they were the first Airborne Division, 25,000 of them, first Airborne Division, where they actually parachuted. And from that point on, they're just the historic division that's been represented ever since from the United States Army. They're still the Airborne Division today. And to this day, they're the only Airborne Division that we actually have in the Army, because 101st actually changed over to air assault during the Vietnam era, and they used to be airborne as well, but they actually changed over to air assault. They maintained the word airborne on their title precisely for historical reasons, but the 82nd Airborne Division is the only division size unit that still exists in the Army today. Yes.
It's good stuff, Nate. So does everyone in the 82nd go to jump school? And what is jump school training like?
Yeah, Chris, every paratrooper that goes to the 82nd Airborne, yeah, you have to be airborne qualified, mandatory. And the funny part is, if you're not airborne qualified, you sit in the replacement center, the replacement battalion, before you go to your unit. And I write about this in the book, in the beginning of the book. If you're not airborne qualified, then you wait for an airborne class that will go up, and then they'll send you down to Fort Benning, Georgia. Well, you'll attend United States Army Airborne School, and down at Fort Benning, Georgia. And then once you come back from that, then you get assigned to a battalion or a unit right there in the 82nd Airborne Division at Fort Bragg. Yes.
Good stuff. So we like to ask this question to a lot of our guests, but specific for you, what's the craziest jump experience you've ever had?
I had 3 tree landings, believe it or not. So you always when you're doing pre-jump, and when you're given pre-jump during sustained airborne training is what we used to call it. You always give a emergency landing warning or whatever it is. And I actually had 3 tree landings when I was in the 82nd Airborne Division throughout the almost 10 years that I spent there. So yeah, you just crash right through the trees with your equipment and all your stuff and all your gear on and everything. And yeah, that's probably about the most craziest. I had 3 tree landings. Yeah.
Is that like, Nate, these are probably like pine trees, or these are Fort Bragg, North Carolina?
Yeah, these are Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
Yeah, so you're like, how far up in the air are you just like hanging there with all your stuff on and everything?
Well, we jump at 800 feet above ground level. So 800 feet. And then once you're coming down, if you're not above the drop zone, which is an open area, you look over and you're like, oh my God, dude. You're talking to yourself, and you really do. And you talk out loud to yourself, and you're looking and you're like, oh my God, I am literally going to land in the trees. I can't, because the wind will blow you right into the trees. And what it really is it's a mistake that I guess an aeronautical, I don't know. I'm not a pilot, but it's actually the Air Force. It's on their shoulders. It's on their,
it's like they miscalculated something or some windig.
Exactly. The wind indicator or whatever how they do it on their aircraft. And so yeah, the wind will blow you right over into the trees. And yeah, so my 72 jumps that I did in the 82nd Airborne Division, I did 72 jumps, and out of those 72, I had 3 tree landings, and those were the most scariest because you're going right into a very heavy populated wood line,
Yeah. Oh man.
With a parachute and all your equipment.
And people think parachute, they think of like what you see people doing, like tricks on and stuff. I guess what type of canopy that is. So the type of canopy though that you're using to do like mass jumps, how like maneuverable are those? Is your parachute?
They're not really maneuverable. When I was in the 82nd Airborne Division, it was a T-10 Bravo when I first started, a T-10 Charlie, and then it escalated to a T-10 Delta, and now, from what I've heard, they have a T-11. It's not even a 10 series, so it's an 11. But you don't really maneuver. You just pull the risers into your chest to slow yourself down as you're getting ready to impact. And to tell your listeners out there, the impact of hitting the ground while jumping out of an airplane, when you land with a parachute, the impact is the same impact of jumping out of a two-story building when you land softly.
And that's that's why they take so much time to train. You guys train so much on how to land, like how to fall, basically, right?
Exactly. Yep. You keep your feet and knees together, and your knees slightly bent, and then you come down. And when you come down, if you try to straighten your legs out or anything like that, you could easily break your legs. So you just got to bend your knees, and it's crazy, man.
Execute a PLF, parachute landing fall, right, boss?
Ooh, nice. Nice. I ain't heard that in a while.
Yeah, one of the things that is always going on in the book, and I can definitely attest to this, is the level of like training and preparing for combat or deployment, like constantly doing that with the 82nd Airborne Division. Like if it hit the fan and something went down somewhere in the world, like when you were there, how fast did you guys have to be ready to be wheels up and deployed?
18 hours. So they would give you actually I should rephrase that. We were given a 2-hour warning, a 2-hour recall was our standard. Within 18 hours, we would be up in wherever we needed to be in the world. And for your listeners out there, the 82nd just actually did that New Year's Eve. If you remember, this last New Year's Eve, the 82nd ended up going over to I'm trying to think, Kuwait. They ended up going to Kuwait because of the Iran crisis situation that was going on before all the COVID-19 and all that. If people remember, before that we had a situation with Iran was getting serious, and the 82nd Airborne Division actually sent a battalion over to Kuwait, and it was New Year's Eve. I remember that. Just this year.
So they were
they were over there. The battalion, 700 or 800 paratroopers were over there in less than 18 hours. Yeah.
Wow, that's
crazy. It's a rapid deployment unit.
With the way that, you look at kind of our last, combat engagements, places like Afghanistan and Iraq, and I know you've deployed with the 82nd. What do you think as far as using airborne, deploying troops airborne? Do you think that has a place still? Kind of in the modern warfare where we're seeing a lot of this, a lot of urban warfare and urban assault type stuff.
You mean like a parachute assault? Pretty much.
Yeah, right. Like we're going to drop you guys off, and you're going to.
Sure. No. I absolutely believe it. I absolutely believe that it is necessary to still sustain that type of engagement. And we did use it twice in Afghanistan in the beginning, and not too many people really know this, but we do the Ranger Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment, that I'm sure you and your listeners are well aware of. They actually did 2 combat jumps in Afghanistan, believe it or not, in the beginning of that combat deployment. And I remember one time I was in the 82nd, and I was a platoon sergeant, and I'm sitting there in my office in my CP, as we called it, command post. And here come this young soldier. He was a private first class PFC. He comes in my office, and he had 2 combat jump stars on his wings. And I'm like, son, what are you doing wearing those? He's like, well, Sergeant, I earned them. I said, how did you earn those, son? You're a private first class. He goes, well, I was in Ranger Regiment. We jumped twice in Afghanistan. And he was being serious. And I was like, you got to be kidding me, man.
Hey, you're thinking that
you don't see that too often.
You're thinking he went to the PX and bought the wrong badge or something.
absolutely, man. Absolutely. I was like, son, it's like, yeah, I'm about to get you in trouble, man. You can't be wearing that. And he was like, no, Sergeant, I actually earned this, and he did. He had a Ranger scroll on his right shoulder, from jumping into Afghanistan twice, and towards the beginning of the conflict. Yeah.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. And one of the things I love, like reading through the book, man, is that I think there's like, or maybe I should ask you, do you think there's like this misconception that that Army dudes are like always in combat and like and no one's just like a regular knucklehead 21-year-old?
Yeah, kind of. There could be a misconception like that, but it's all the same, man. Mosley, I'll tell you, once I got high rank, senior enlisted, a rank, E7 and above. Once I got to that position, and I started talking to other branches of the military, like Marine Corps. Like when I was in Iraq in 2003, 2004, we were relieved by a Marine Corps battalion, and I was talking to a gunnery sergeant who was a E7 and from the Marines. And he was talking to me, and we were standing outside, and he's like, "Are you sick of this shit yet?" Excuse my language. He goes, "Are you tired of this stuff yet, man?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm pretty tired of it, man." I said, "I can't wait to retire." He looked at me, he goes, "How long do you got, man?" And I said, "Oh, I got this many years." And I said, "How long you got?" He goes, "Oh, I got this many years." And we just sat there and put our arms around each other, man, and it was cool, But so all that fighting between branches of the military and stuff, man, that goes away once you get high rank, higher enlisted rank or, military rank or whatever.
That's a good segue too in our next question. So is it typical for somebody to spend nearly half their career in the 82nd Airborne like you did? And then, why do you guys like being part of that unit so much?
Oh, well, being in the 82nd is just a camaraderie that it just stays with you, I guess, is the best answer I can give you, Chris, because, you go into that environment and you're airborne qualified. And once you start getting rank and once you start getting, higher duty positions, you start learning all the ranges, all the training areas, all the drop zones. And then you start getting comfortable with that. And not to mention that you still have a contract to pursue too. When you re-enlist, you have a contract to pursue with the airborne community. You have an airborne contract or whatever, so you still have to pursue it anyway. And you can either go to the 82nd or you can go to Vicenza, Italy, because a lot of guys they go back and forth. Because Vicenza, Italy, is the home of the 173rd Airborne Combat Brigade. So a lot of guys used to go back and forth from Italy to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and so forth. And so yeah, it's just one of those things where you just, you keep the camaraderie, but yet you get comfortable.
Yeah.
Like Fort Bragg, to this day, I can tell you exactly where every range is, every drop zone, and I've been out of the Army now for 10 years, but I can still tell you every firing range there is on Fort Bragg,
That's good stuff.
And one of the things that I always thought was cool. So tell us real quick, because I think it's a great part of your story, Nate. When you were first in the Army, though, you weren't hard charger, or well, I say not in the sense that you ended your career. Like when you first enlisted, what was your first gig?
Oh man, when I first enlisted, I was a 71 Lima, which is an administrative specialist, and excuse me. When I went into that, primarily it was because I was colorblind, and I failed the color vision test, the old PIP test, they called it, where you had to depict the numbers out of the circles, and I had failed that, and because I wanted to go airborne infantry from the get-go, but I couldn't because I failed the color vision test. And back in those days, you couldn't get into the infantry or combat arms, period, unless you could pass the color vision test.
Yeah, and can you stop for those that don't know, right? Because typically I think there's the misconception of like, hey, if you can fog a mirror, you can get in the infantry, right? But why is the colorblind thing so? If you can tell our listeners why that's so important to be in combat, in a combat situation.
Well, because you have to be able to tell from a distance. You have to be able to depict from a distance who's who and basically what is what, to be honest with you.
Like flares and tracers and things like that.
Oh, absolutely, man. And because you're going to kill and shoot. I mean, or, shoot and kill, I should say. And, yeah, it's a crazy environment. But anyways, that's the reason why I had to go, a soft skill MOS, military occupational skill when I first started, was because I couldn't pass the, color vision test. And then when I did my second enlistment after my first 3.5 years, I went up for re-enlistment. They had a machine that came over your head. It was more technical. And basically a screen came over your face, and then you just had to depict which color was green and which color was red. And then that's how I passed, because I could always tell the difference between green and red. But as far as the PIP test, that with the colors, with the numbers, I couldn't pick out the numbers. And to this day, I still can't. But anyways, so yeah, that's how I became 11 Bravo infantry.
And that's such a crazy, like, just for our listeners, you hear a lot. That's very atypical. You hear a lot about guys who are like, yeah, they do the infantry or combat arms skills or jobs, and then they're like, I kind of want to go maybe to something not as taxing, right? not as physical, not when you're landing in pine trees, right, on airborne jumps and hitting the ground like you're jumping from a 2-story building 72 times throughout your career. So kudos to you, man, because you obviously you wanted to do that, growing up, and it didn't stop you, right? You kind of maybe you paused there for a few years and did the 71 Lima thing, got a deployment, right, to the first Gulf War in that time.
Well, I tell you what, though, too, Mosley, another thing it did, it taught me how to type. And now I'm an author. I'm a 3-book author. And so it taught me how to type, man. So there you go.
That's awesome. Hey, so if anyone, okay, so let's say there's somebody, some young dude out there who wants to sign up, enlist, and be a super hard charger like you were. What advice would you give them?
Do not quit. Keep going. Keep striving on. Do not quit. Do not let your ego get in front of your way. In other words, if you're on the rifle range, you don't try to do the Kentucky windage you were taught growing up with your shotgun. You listen to the drill sergeants, and you listen to your sergeants once you get to your unit. And then someday you will get up there yourself and you will make it through. So that would be the best, the best advice I can give to a young child, a young teenager that wants to join into the military.
That's good stuff. Yeah. Brandon told me too, you kind of have a lot of grit as well. I mean, you're one of the few guys that's like, hey, I'm sick of sitting behind a desk. I got to get out there and do something. And you grind it out in some of that PT, he tells me. So Nate, you carried a lot of gear. Speaking about, not just PT, but humping it with a lot of gear during your time in the 82nd Airborne. What was the one piece of gear you had to have with you at all times in the field? Let's say besides your rifle.
One thing you had to have, and I'm not going to try to, I'm trying to be realistic with your listeners. You have to have toilet paper in your rucksack. You had to have it in a Ziploc bag, a little Ziploc bag. You had to have your toilet paper. And I'm not a cheap guy, because MRE has a little bit, the meal ready to eat, the little MREs that we got. They have a little thing of toilet paper inside there, but it's real cheap. But I like the 2-ply, good Charmin toilet paper. So I always kept a good roll in a Ziploc baggie in my rucksack there when I went out in the field.
Nice piece of
when you're in the field.
Gear.
Yeah.
You have to have it, man.
Gear, for sure. Hey, and we'll I'll have to do a demo sometime of an e-tool, field expedient. Way to take a dump in the field, I guess, with field expedient.
That'd be a nice dude hack.
A dude hack, maybe, and post it on Facebook or something. All this being said, man, how did you come to write Division, Life on Ardennes Street, your first book? How hard was it to get started?
Okay, let me be honest with you. About a year and a half ago, I actually had weight loss surgery, and a lot of people really don't know this. So this is actually coming out for the first time on your show. I had weight loss surgery because I had gained a lot of weight when I retired from the Army, man. Like, I quit smoking cigarettes, I quit doing tobacco, and I put on like 50 pounds, and I just couldn't get the weight off, man. I was trying to work out, and I was like, man, this ain't working. So I went and got weight loss surgery. Well, before you have weight loss surgery, you go through a 2 or 3 week period where you have to be on a liquid diet. Okay. And I'm answering your question about how I got to write this book. So I'm sitting there with my wife, and I started my liquid diet, and I'm sitting there drinking coffee with her in the morning, which you're not supposed to do, but I did anyway. And she's like, hey, or I was telling her a story about the 82nd Airborne Division. One of my stories with Sergeant First Class P, one of the chapters I have in there and stuff. And she goes, Nate, why don't you write this down? Why don't you write these down in a memoir, for your kids, someday your grandkids, write this down, or better, maybe even better, put it into a book, And then she got up, and I thought about it. She went and took a shower. By the time she came outside to do her makeup and all that stuff, I already had an introduction, and I was already on chapter 1 of my first book. And so I'm not kidding, man. I wrote this book, Brandon and Chris, I wrote this in 45 days, wow. Division, my first book, Division. Yeah, I wrote it in 45 days. And it kept my mind off food. And, because when you're on a liquid diet, all you can eat is, just water, some chicken broth, maybe coffee, whatever. But yeah, so you do that for 3 weeks. But yeah, I go into that more later. But yeah, it's crazy, man. Yeah, that's exactly how I wrote Division, man.
So you just sat down and basically all those stories that were in your head, you just started putting them on paper.
I just put them all on paper. Yep, a Word document. Yep, just kept going. And next thing you know, and here's the cool part about it. So I got it all completed, and I kind of screwed up a little bit because it was my first book. So I kind of wrote it like a military manual. So, and I never thought about it. A lot of people may not understand what that is, And so after I wrote it, I put it into to the publishing company, the first publishing company that came up on Google, because I just Googled. I didn't know nothing about writing a book, and they accepted it. First time go, man. And it took a lot for them to rewrite that, because they had to, they want to spell everything out, because I put, a rank, corporal, CPL. Mm-hmm. They would put corporal, everything has to be spelled out. So the second book, roster number 50, which comes out, or actually came out today officially.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, it just came out today. My second book of my 3-book series. But I learned my lessons. So I wrote it out, everything, I spelled everything out. I try to get away from the nomenclature and just spell everything out so that the civilian readers can understand it, and that's what I did. Yeah.
That's cool. So Division Life on Ardennes Street, the one we're talking today, roster 50 is the one that just released today. And we're going to have you back on the show to talk about that. That's about your time in Ranger School. Can't wait to hear that one. Then we have a third book. And do I need to call Amazon Prime or Netflix and get us a series, man, or a movie about your life? Or how's that? You want me to be your agent for you?
I tell you what, Mosley, if you can get me in contact with a movie producer, man, that would be great. If you know anybody down there in Florida, get me. That'd be great. Because I tell you, my goal. That's my goal, man. Once my third book is released, I'm going to take all 3 books. I'm going to mail them all to one movie producer or whatever, and say, what is the expectations, or what can I do with this, and see where it goes. I think it'll be a good 2.5 hour movie. Once because they all linked in together to Division Life on Ardennes Street.
That is so cool. As long as I don't have to play myself in the movie, or maybe I can get a cameo. Yeah. If I could just get a cameo, some old some old salty like Sergeant Major or something, and get a cameo in there. We'll get Chris in there as well. Where should one of the things I loved about the book, again, I've told you this about life on Ardennes Street, is that I felt like I was sitting here having a conversation with you, and that's in reading the book, I think it's very relatable the way the book is written. How can our listeners get a copy? Where should Dudeology show listeners buy the book?
Well, they can go directly to my website, www.n Aguinaga, and that's AGUINAGA.com. They can go directly to that link, and or actually, I have direct links to for the books for Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and so on. Pretty much any book place, and they go directly to it. Yeah,
and we'll post that. We'll post that in the description of the show.
Sure, and then just go or just go to Amazon or whatever, and just type in Division Life on Ardennes Street, and it'll come right up.
Sure. Awesome.
All right, dude. Final question, and this is totally self-serving. Okay, because I know you love the 82nd Airborne. I know you love the 82nd Airborne Division.
Hell yeah!
But how did 1st Platoon, 1st of the 506 Air Assault, measure up to you and your 82nd boys? Could we have hung with the 82nd?
Ooh. God, that's a good one right there. You talking about the Jokers over there?
Yeah, Joker Platoon, man. Yeah, how did we? Could we have hung?
Tell you what, man.
Could you have dropped us on Ardennes Street? I mean, would we have made you proud?
Let me tell you something. That platoon, I wish I would have had that platoon when I was a platoon sergeant in the 82nd Airborne Division. I mean, all the guys, every one of them. You, Pinson, all them guys, man. I wish I would have had all you guys with me in the 82nd Airborne Division. I was, it's funny that you asked me that, because I always thought about that. I used to sit at my desk sometimes when I'd get a 5-minute break or whatever, man, in my CP, in my office there, and I'd sit there and I'm like, boy, I wish I had some of my boys from Korea in this platoon, man. We'd be smoking that ass. Excuse my language.
I love it, brother.
Yeah, we'd be smoking that ass, man. But I wish I would have had you guys, man, because we were tough, man. Yeah, what a tough unit we were in, man.
Yeah, we're gonna have to just have a show where we just swap stories about.
Oh, absolutely.
That's a good one, brother. Well, hey, thank you. Thank you, Nate. Thank you for coming on and for sharing this with us. Author of Division, Life on Ardennes Street. Make sure to check it out on Amazon. We're also going to post it in the show notes. And after you buy a copy, check out all the Dudeology show past episodes and subscribe on wherever you listen to your podcast. For the full video experience, make sure to check us out on YouTube. So on behalf of all dudes getting after it out there, we'd like to say thank you to the fighting men and women of the 82nd Airborne Division, All-American. We are and will be forever grateful for the work you do day in and day out. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to The Dudeology Show, your spot for cool stories, awesome stuff, and killer gear. Make sure to subscribe to us on your favorite listening platform and follow us on social media @Dudeology Show.